the first Patterns of Evidence movie lionized the revised chronology of David Rohl. Today, we are going to explore whether Rohl's revised chronology actually works. Many people are impressed by the Patterns of Evidence movies, but few people have heard anything critical about Rohl's view. Much of this is because the organizations that support David Rohl filter out contradictory evidence from the public eye. I'm hoping that these videos will provide a bit of more balance. If you like these videos and wish to help this channel, please hit the subscribe button and leave a comment. It feeds the algorithm. And if you would like to support this channel financially, please consider becoming a member on Patreon or perhaps purchasing my forthcoming book. Please use the affiliate link below. Okay, let's discuss David Rohl's revised chronology. In a nutshell, Rohl offers a new chronology that he uses to suggest a different identity for the biblical Shishak and the King of the Exodus. He begins with trying to establish what he calls the 4 pillars of conventional chronology. And his 4 pillars of conventional chronology are 1. The sack of Thebes by Assyrian king Ashurbanipal. 2. The equivalency between the biblical Shishak and the Egyptian king Shoshenq I. 3. The ascension of Egyptian king Akhmosa in 1550 BC based upon the heliacal rising of the star Sothis in 1517 BC. And 4. The ascension of Egyptian king Ramses II in 1279 BC based upon lunar dating. Now, right from the outset, there are issues with this view. Rohl has pieced together what is called a straw man, which is a false representation of what a person believes to make it easier to knock down. So think of this. You've built a man of straw and you can just blow it down. You've made it so weak and flimsy that you can just blow it down with your breath. That's sort of the image of the straw man. You're not giving the argument its real strength. You're creating a caricature of the argument. Now, the current chronology as it exists today was neither derived nor is dependent upon these so-called 4 pillars of conventional chronology. So let's look at the 4 pillars and see how David Rohl built his straw man. The first pillar, the sack of Egyptian city Thebes by Assyrian king Ashurbanipal. And this is the only one of the 4 pillars that is actually used in the establishment of current chronology. We'll give him that. He got this one right. It's easy to date, and no one really contests this, neither Rohl nor academic chronologists. But then again, you need at least a little truth as bait to get people to swallow the lie. It's like you bait a fishing hook with a worm. You need the little bit of worm to catch the fish. And this is what David Rohl is using to catch the fish. This is his little bit of truth. So that's pillar 1. The second pillar, the equivalency between the biblical Shishak and Egyptian king Shoshenq I, is something that modern chronologists accept, but the current chronology was not founded upon it. If this synchronism, and synchronism is a connection between 2 kings, went away, nothing would be changed as far as dating is concerned. Rohl here confuses causes and effects. It's like saying Jennifer comes to class just as the bell rings every day. Jennifer's arrival at class causes the bell to ring. It's the same deal. We accept that this synchronism is true because the rest of modern chronology leads us to believe the synchronism is true, not the reverse. So while we accept it, it's not a pillar of modern chronology. The third pillar, which is the ascension of King Ahmose at the beginning of Dynasty 18, based upon the heliacal rising of the star Sothis. Now, the heliacal rising is when a star appears right on the horizon on a certain day, just as dawn is breaking. That's the heliacal rising. And this event occurs once every 1400 plus years. And it's a measurement that some chronologists in the past used, but modern chronology doesn't use it anymore. No responsible chronologist uses the Sothic cycle to date anything anymore. Because the thing with archaeoastronomy is it sounds really scientific, and it sounds really accurate, but it really isn't. The heliacal measurement is fraught with a bunch of conditions. Like, it depends. Where did you take the measurement from? Did you take it from Thebes? Did you take it from Memphis? Did you take it from Alexandria? Where did you take the measurement from? That changes the date. And just the measurement alone has an error of plus or minus 8 years. So you could be out by 16 years easily. Also, the fact is nobody knows when the cycle began, how long the Egyptians regarded the cycle, and when did it end. So there's all these questions that make it completely unreliable for dating purposes. So nobody uses it to date anymore. The ascension of King Ahmose today is based upon regnal year counts, dating from the Amarna letters, and we'll get more into the Amarna letters, and to a limited extent what is found in the writings of Manetho, who kept the king's list. The fourth pillar, the ascension of Egyptian king Ramses II, based upon lunar dating. Now, modern chronology does not use lunar dating for the same reasons we don't use the Sothic cycle. Again, it's fraught with error. There's lots of inconsistencies in measurements. It has the same problems. Instead, today, Ramses II is dated using a combination of regnal year counts and the synchronisms with the Hittite kings Muwatalli II and Hattusili III. Those Hittite kings are in turn synchronized with the kings of the Middle Assyrian Empire and the Babylonian Second Dynasty. This securely dates Ramses II to the 13th century BC. Now, those are the four pillars. But what's more important is what Rohl leaves out. There's a huge amount of data that Rohl simply omits and pretends doesn't exist. He omits that current chronology of the ancient Near East is based upon the idea of synchronisms, which we've already mentioned once. A synchronism is a piece of evidence that shows two people lived at the same time. For example, if a letter is sent from one king to another, we know that the two kings must have been alive at roughly the same time. That's a synchronism. Synchronisms can take many forms, with diplomatic letters, chronicles, and treaties being the most common. And they represent the most important evidence for the modern chronologist. And today, there are over 150 known synchronisms that correlates the succession of over 500 kings in the ancient Near East. These synchronisms and king lists are the real basis of ancient chronology, and they fit together only in a limited number of ways. The problem with Rohl's view is that he pretends synchronisms don't exist. It is the argument of invincible ignorance. That is, he refuses to accept that these documents exist. If you refuse to accept any evidence, you can make up whatever you want. But unfortunately, even that too stops working after a while. So, this is how Rohl tries to discredit conventional chronology with his straw man. He uses evidence that they don't use, and then omits the evidence they do use. After this, he redates all the Egyptian dynasties. He dates the 18th and 19th dynasties to 300 years later, and the Middle Kingdom he redates to the end of the 15th century. Now, this dating has appealed to many proponents of American biblical chronology, such as what you find in Answers in Genesis. Because they think that this makes Egyptian chronology consistent with a universal flood that they date to 2348 BC. However, what Rohl gives, Rohl takes away. He takes that 300 years from the New Kingdom and then adds it to the end of the Old Kingdom and First Intermediate Period. So in reality, Rohl is not really a friend of American biblical chronology. Overall, Rohl's new chronology is a crazy, mixed-up mess that even a computer can't untangle. Now, in the past, one could just create any old chronology and no one could prove or disprove that assertion. It was essentially an assertion that couldn't be proved one way or the other. But today, computer programs exist that can validate a chronology to see if it is internally consistent. One such program is the Groundhog Chronology Test Laboratory. With this kind of software, one can enter a proposed chronology, and then the computer tests the chronology for internal consistency, and outputs the result in a color-coded graph. Now, here's an example of an internally consistent chronology. It's conventional chronology. Notice that the output produced by Groundhog shows nothing but green. When we take Rohl's new chronology and enter it into the computer program, this is the result the computer generated. Each red mark is where the chronology was shown to be inconsistent with a particular synchronism. The computer analysis shows 40 points of contradiction with his chronology. In other words, there is no way his new chronology can possibly be true. Nevertheless, it doesn't take a computer program or a rocket scientist to figure out that Rohl's new chronology doesn't work. One of the reasons is because King Akhenaten is redated to the time of King Saul in Rohl's new chronology. And yet, Akhenaten is still receiving letters from the Mitanni Empire that has supposedly been defunct for 200 years. Yes, we know the mail can be slow sometimes, but 200 years is a little much to accept. None of this should come as a surprise, however. After 25 years, nobody has been able to get Rohl's chronology to really work. And people have desperately tried to make it work. In short, Rohl's new chronology is a complete failure. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. That's all for now, and I'll see you next time on Ancient Egypt and the Bible.